This is the fate that awaits cheaters.
Buckle up, because this revenge story is absolutely wild, and I'm still shaking from how perfectly it all went down. About 6 weeks ago, my spouse of 8 years decided to send me the most arrogant photograph imaginable. There she was, my wife Monica, stretched out on my custom-restored sailboat wearing that expensive summer outfit I'd purchased for her birthday, cuddled up with some random dude named Kyle who was grinning like he'd just won the lottery jackpot. The audacity was absolutely breathtaking. This wasn't just any watercraft we're talking about here. This was my baby, a vintage vessel I'd spent 4 grueling years rebuilding from the hull up every single weekend, while she claimed to be running errands around town or visiting her sister upstate. Every bolt, every piece of mahogany wood, every coat of marine varnish applied by my own hands during countless hours of meticulous restoration work, while she was apparently busy planning her secret romance with this complete stranger. The caption on that photograph read, "Wish you were here," with a bunch of heart emojis and some stupid wine glass symbols. I stared at that image for maybe 30 seconds, processing the sheer disrespect and calculating my response, then calmly typed back, "I am," and walked directly out my back door toward the marina, where I'd been planning this exact moment for months. Standing at the end of my private dock was a distinguished gentleman in an impeccable charcoal suit holding a thick leather portfolio. This was Marcus Wellington, the estate attorney I'd been quietly working with since I first noticed something suspicious about her behavior patterns. His presence wasn't coincidental or emotional. It was strategic and absolutely essential to what was about to unfold in the next few hours. Before I continue with this absolute masterpiece of revenge, let me just say that if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, or if you're just tired of watching cheaters get away with their selfishness and manipulation, please hit that upvote button and subscribe to my profile. Stories like this need to be shared because they show that sometimes preparation and patience can triumph over deception and entitlement every single time. Now back to that dock where I stood waiting for her grand entrance. The afternoon sun was casting long golden shadows across the calm water, and there was this eerie stillness before the storm that was about to completely destroy her world. Monica had absolutely no clue I was even in the same state, let alone standing 50 yards from where she was playing house with her replacement boyfriend on my private property. Here's what she didn't understand about me. I'm not the type of man you can publicly humiliate without facing serious legal consequences. You definitely don't bring your side piece to my lake house property, consume my expensive imported booze, and then broadcast it on social media like you've somehow won the ultimate game. That's not bold or empowering behavior. That's completely suicidal from a strategic standpoint. She assumed I'd see that photograph and completely fall apart emotionally like some pathetic sufferer. Instead, I'd been watching their little romance develop through high-powered binoculars for weeks, taking detailed notes about their patterns, behavior, and every single time they trespassed on my property. The way she leaned into him with such familiarity suggested this affair had been developing for many months, not just a recent summer fling. Even that decorative beach towel she draped over the boat railing was from our honeymoon luggage set, the same towel she claimed had mysteriously vanished after our last vacation together in the Caribbean. Every single detail in that arrogant photograph screamed entitlement and showed me exactly how long I'd been the clueless husband in their private joke. When their boat finally started approaching my dock around sunset, Monica was still laughing and waving at the water like she owned the entire lake and everything around it. She had absolutely zero awareness that every property title, every legal document, every utility account, every insurance policy was registered under my name exclusively through carefully structured trusts. Thanks to Marcus and months of careful legal maneuvering, this was about to become irrevocably and permanently clear. Her fundamental mistake wasn't simply the cheating itself, though that was unforgivable. Her mistake was assuming I didn't already know everything and hadn't spent considerable time preparing for this exact confrontation with military precision. When she finally stepped off that boat and saw who was standing beside me, holding documents that would completely redefine her entire reality, that's when the real story truly began. The lake stretched out like a perfect mirror, reflecting the golden evening sky with cicadas humming peacefully in the background trees, and the low rumble of Kyle's boat engine as it glided confidently toward my private dock. From this distance, you'd never guess the absolute devastation that was about to unfold. It looked like a perfect romantic summer evening, the kind where couples share expensive wine and watch sunsets together. That's exactly what Monica thought too, right up until the precise moment she noticed Marcus standing beside me in his expensive tailored suit and polished gold cufflinks. This was the type of legal professional who communicates more through strategic silence than words, the kind who finalizes complex business deals and closes entire chapters of people's lives with nothing more than a subtle professional nod. "Everything is properly arranged and legally binding," he murmured quietly to me, and I knew he meant every single piece of paperwork in that thick portfolio. When you execute revenge correctly and methodically, it doesn't require volumes of documentation, just a few precisely crafted legal instruments that can completely reshape someone's world. House ownership transferred completely to my personal irrevocable trust. Boat registration updated to reflect sole ownership under my Maritime LLC Corporation. Dock privileges redesignated as private access under the Waterfront Development Covenant with no subletting, sharing, or third-party mooring permitted under any circumstances. Even the electronic security gate access codes had been changed that very morning. Monica was still giggling somewhere out on the water, her drunken laughter carrying across the calm surface, followed by the distinctive sound of expensive glass clinking against the boat's polished hull. Those sounds didn't trigger any nostalgia or regret in me anymore. They just sounded like meaningless static, empty noise from people who didn't belong on my property. You know what's really interesting about this whole situation? I wasn't even angry anymore by that point in the evening. That particular emotion had died completely months earlier. Somewhere between the third fake business conference she swore I'd somehow missed attending and discovering the second pair of men's designer sunglasses hidden behind our expensive couch cushions. When I casually asked about those mysterious sunglasses one evening, she immediately claimed they belonged to my brother from his last visit to our house. The problem with that explanation is, my brother has been legally blind in one eye since his college motorcycle accident and hasn't worn sunglasses in over a decade. That's when I started documenting everything methodically, instead of confronting her directly about her obvious lies. She wasn't prepared to deal with a husband who maintains detailed investigative logs instead of having emotional outbursts and dramatic arguments. I deliberately let her believe she was successfully deceiving me while I methodically gathered evidence and consulted with legal experts about comprehensive asset protection strategies. Marcus adjusted his leather portfolio slightly, and I caught a glimpse of the prestigious law firm's emblem embossed in silver lettering on the cover. It gleamed briefly in the fading golden sunlight. No theatrical drama or shouting matches required here, just the surgical dismantling of every assumption she'd built her fantasy relationship upon. The secret to truly effective revenge is timing everything absolutely perfectly. You don't strike when you're hurt and emotional and making poor decisions. You strike when they're at their happiest and most confident, when they're finally comfortable enough to laugh openly because they believe nobody is watching their pathetic performance. As their boat curved gracefully into its final approach toward my dock, I could see them both clearly now. Monica's tanned legs draped casually over Kyle's lap, her manicured hand resting possessively on his shoulder, the exact same way she used to touch me during our own romantic sunset watching sessions on this very dock. It's funny how intimate behaviors just recycle themselves with different people. Marcus didn't need any additional instructions from me at this point. He'd worked with men in my exact situation before. Quiet, methodical, patient individuals who don't create dramatic scenes in kitchen arguments, but instead whisper in corporate boardrooms and sign legal documents that speak far louder than any shouting match ever could. The boat pulled up alongside my dock with a soft thud of fiberglass meeting rubber bumpers. Kyle cut the engine smoothly, and suddenly the evening became incredibly quiet, except for gentle lapping water. Monica stepped off first, still barefoot and carefree, that expensive sundress flowing around her like she was starring in some romantic movie scene. She looked directly at me, and her smile froze instantly. Not gradually. It just stopped like someone had hit a pause button on her entire face. The plastic cup in her hand tilted dangerously, but didn't spill, just forgotten completely. Her spine straightened defensively, and those designer sunglasses came down over her eyes. Not because of bright sun, but because she didn't want her panic to show. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, trying to sound annoyed rather than terrified. It was a performance, but her voice was too tight and her shoulders too stiff. She was attempting to establish dominance, like I had somehow crashed her private weekend getaway. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a thick cream-colored envelope with my attorney's embossed seal in dark green wax. The The kind of envelope that doesn't contain love letters or apologies. It contains legal leverage that can destroy lives. She actually smirked when I handed it to her. "Are you serving me papers now? How pathetically dramatic," she said, cracking the wax seal with her thumbnail, like she was ready to tear into whatever emotional tantrum she assumed I'd written. I didn't say a single word, just waited patiently while Marcus stood perfectly still beside me. He'd witnessed this exact scene many times before with other clients. Monica pulled out the first legal document and skimmed it quickly, then much slower, her eyebrows furrowed in confusion. The second page came out next, her eyes scanning faster and more frantically. By the third page, that arrogant smirk had completely vanished from her face. She flipped back to the first page, scanned the legal heading again, then again with growing panic. Her lips parted, but no sound emerged for several long seconds. Finally, she looked up at me with genuine fear. "Where's my name on any of these documents?" Marcus stepped forward slightly, clearing his throat professionally. His voice was perfectly even, rehearsed, and devastatingly clinical. "You were never legally listed anywhere, ma'am. The lake house is held exclusively under the Patterson Family Trust with Mr. Richardson as sole beneficiary. Premarital asset protection clauses were established and signed. The boat is registered through a separate LLC under the same trust structure, funded entirely with non-marital income sources. Even this dock space was technically reassigned under revised property lines last fall." He paused just long enough for the reality to sting properly. "It's all legally his property." Monica blinked rapidly, then laughed, a short, sharp bark of complete disbelief. "No, this can't possibly be right. That house was our home together." "Our nothing," I interrupted calmly. "You always said you didn't want to be bothered with boring paperwork and legal documents, so you weren't included in anything." She took a step backward, but there was nowhere to go. Behind her was water. Beside her was Kyle, who suddenly looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on Earth. And in front of her were two men who had already signed the end of her fantasy into legal motion. Kyle finally spoke up, his voice uncertain. "Wait, is this actually real legal stuff? I thought married people owned everything together. That's basic community property law, right?" "Premarital assets completely segregated," Marcus replied with devastating calm. "Trust structures established before marriage and funded entirely from separate accounts. Her name appears nowhere on any ownership documentation, by deliberate design and with notarized consent." He opened his portfolio with the practiced ease of someone delivering bad news professionally. "Would you like me to show you the Asset Protection Clause, Section 12, Paragraph 4? Kyle's confident smirk started evaporating rapidly. You could practically see his brain trying to process what had just been explained. He glanced at Monica desperately, but she wasn't looking at him anymore. She was staring at those legal papers like they might rearrange themselves if she concentrated hard enough. "This doesn't mean anything real," Kyle tried again, louder and more defensive. "This is just legal intimidation tactics, right? Scare tactics to mess with people's heads." I finally turned to look directly at him. "You're currently standing on a dock owned by a trust you have zero authorization to access. Technically speaking, right now you're trespassing on private property." His face twitched noticeably. For a split second, he looked like he might try to laugh it off again, but the entire atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The casual summer evening vibe was completely gone. "This is completely insane," he muttered, hands sliding into his pockets nervously. "She told me this place belonged to both of you equally." "She says many things," I replied quietly. "Apparently." That's when Kyle turned to Monica directly, finally understanding the situation. "You said this was your house too. You said we could use it whenever we wanted." Monica's jaw was locked tight, still desperately clinging to her delusions. "I thought it was ours. I honestly thought we owned it together." "You thought incorrectly," Marcus interjected with clinical precision. Kyle stepped back again, realizing he'd never been a player in this story, just a disposable extra with no lines and zero legal standing. "I don't need to be here for this crazy situation." "No," I agreed. "You really don't need to be here." He didn't wait for permission. Kyle turned and walked back toward the boat quickly, clearly wanting to escape before things got worse. Monica didn't follow him or call out. She just stood there, clutching those legal documents, finally understanding that even her lover was abandoning her when reality hit. I turned and walked up the dock toward the house she used to call our little romantic escape. Footsteps followed behind me. 2 sets, rushed and uneven. Monica hissed something angry at Kyle. He snapped something back. They weren't lovers anymore, just co-conspirators scrambling to get their stories straight as the truth demolished their fantasy. The house stood quiet and eerily still when I opened the front door. Not empty, completely cleared out. I hadn't bothered locking it earlier because there was absolutely nothing left for anyone to take. Monica's heels clicked on the hardwood floors as she moved inside, then her steps slowed dramatically. The living room was bare, the hallway was empty. She opened closet doors frantically, nothing inside. Bathroom cabinets swung wide, completely empty. The kitchen had bare shelves without even a coffee filter remaining. Not a single framed photograph on the walls. No shoes by the entrance. No personal items anywhere. No lingering scent of our shared life together. No memory of me existing in this space. Where is literally everything? She whispered to herself, opening the hallway closet again, as if she'd somehow missed something important. That's when she noticed the fireplace mantel, a single sheet of expensive stationery resting dead center, held down by the marble paperweight she'd given me for our 3rd anniversary. I'd never liked that pretentious thing, but I kept it because it made her feel clever about her gift choice. Monica picked up the paper slowly and carefully. No dramatic flourish, just a simple sentence written in black ink. Already gone. Kyle read it over her shoulder, and his face twitched with embarrassment and growing realization. She turned to him with pleading eyes, desperately wanting some reassurance, some joke, some "we'll figure this out together" moment. All she got was uncomfortable silence. He stepped away from her, and that note accomplished more damage than any angry accusation could have. It communicated everything without shouting. I had moved out weeks ago, carefully and quietly, box by box and room by room, during all her fake business trips and romantic weekends. She hadn't noticed because she'd been too busy playing house with her replacement. Every meaningful possession was gone. Only the empty shell remained, the one she thought she had claimed as her own. Monica's hand went to her chest like she couldn't breathe properly. Kyle looked at her like a man realizing he'd climbed into the wrong lifeboat on a sinking ship. "You emptied out everything," she said in barely a whisper. "No," I replied calmly. "You emptied it the second you brought him here. I just packed the boxes and moved them." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was absolutely final. The sound of two people standing in a place where neither of them belonged anymore. Then we heard the front door opening softly. Our daughter Emma stepped inside, moving deliberately, no drama or bag slamming like in previous family arguments. Her posture was straight and determined, the way she always stood when bracing for something emotionally heavy. She scanned the empty room quickly, took in the silence and wreckage, then walked directly to me and wrapped her arms around my waist tightly. "Hi, Dad," she said simply. I held her longer than usual, not from sentiment but for grounding. She wasn't just my daughter in that moment. She was the last unbroken piece of what I used to consider home. Monica opened her mouth to speak, probably to say Emma's name, but no sound came out. Emma didn't even glance at her mother, just pulled a manila envelope from her school bag and set it on the empty table. "For the record, I'm not here for family drama. I'm here for legal clarity," Emma announced. Marcus took the envelope like a museum curator handling precious artifacts. He opened it, reviewed the contents quickly, and gave a single professional nod. Then he looked directly at Monica. Per the updated documentation, the beneficiary designation for the College Education Fund has been reassigned to a different trust under sole custodial control of Mr. Richardson. As of this morning, all disbursement permissions have been permanently revoked from previous access holders. Monica stared at him, then at the envelope, then at Emma with growing panic. "What exactly does that mean?" "It means," Emma replied quietly, "that if you try to touch a single cent of my college fund again, you'll be dealing with Dad's legal team instead of me." "You can't do this to me. That's our money," Monica protested weakly. Marcus raised his hand slightly. It was always his signature on the account. He simply allowed joint access for convenience. That access is now permanently terminated. Monica blinked rapidly, trying to find some loophole that didn't exist. "You really did this to me?" she asked Emma, voice shaking. "This is the part I'll never forget." Emma just looked at her mother with eyes that had finally seen the truth clearly. "You did it to yourself, Mom. You don't get to destroy something and then act confused when it stops working." Emma's voice was steady, not angry or sad, just completely done with the situation. That's when I understood that this wasn't just a marriage falling apart. This was a generation choosing sides based on who showed up with honesty in their hands. Monica stood frozen, watching the daughter she'd raised walk past her without another glance. Emma stopped beside me briefly, kissed my cheek, and said, "Call me later, okay?" "Always," I promised. Emma left without slamming the door. She didn't need dramatic gestures because the echo she left behind was louder than anything her mother could say. Monica completely lost her composure then. The fake smirks, crossed arms, and phony confidence shattered like cheap glass. "This is my home," she screamed desperately. Marcus didn't even flinch. "You've been a guest here, and now your access is permanently terminated." Monica stormed upstairs, practically shoving past Marcus, muttering threats about lawyers and fraud. Her bare feet pounded the stairs hard while she searched for something, anything that might still belong to her. She found my suitcase by the bedroom door. Black, familiar, already packed. I'd placed it there deliberately for her to discover, to understand how far ahead I'd planned everything. Every drawer was empty. Every closet was cleared out. No backup plan, no secret stash, no evidence I'd ever intended to stay in this marriage. When she came back downstairs, hair disheveled and makeup streaked, she looked like someone who just realized they'd been completely erased from their own life story. The confrontation spilled outside where neighbors had gathered to watch. Monica was screaming about her rights while standing barefoot on property that had never legally been hers. Someone was definitely recording everything on their phone for social media. Kyle had already started the boat engine, clearly wanting to escape before the situation got worse. "You should figure out your own problems," he told her flatly before pulling away from the dock. Monica stood alone on my dock, trembling, surrounded by witnesses and not a single person on her side. She wasn't the sufferer in this story. She was the architect of her own destruction. Emma and I sailed away that evening while Monica remained on the shoreline, watching the life she thought she'd stolen drift permanently beyond her reach. The whole plan took 8 months to organize, but only 8 hours to execute perfectly. But here's where the story gets even more satisfying, Reddit. About 3 days after this nuclear explosion of justice, I started getting frantic phone calls and text messages from Monica's family members. Apparently, she'd been telling everyone that I'd somehow stolen her house and boat through illegal manipulation. Her sister called me screaming about how I was a vindictive monster who'd trapped her poor innocent sibling. I calmly explained to each family member exactly what had happened, that Monica had been cheating, that she'd never legally owned any of the property, and that I had every right to protect my assets. I even offered to send them copies of the legal documents proving everything belonged to me from day one. Most of them went silent after that conversation. Her mother was the only one who kept calling, begging me to work things out and think about the family. I told her there was nothing to work out. Monica had made her choice when she brought another man to my property and flaunted it on social media. Some bridges once burned can never be rebuilt. Meanwhile, Kyle completely disappeared from the picture. Turns out he was married too. And when his wife found out about the affair through the neighborhood social media videos, she filed for divorce immediately. Monica tried calling him for weeks afterward, but he'd blocked her number and deleted all his social media accounts. The man she thought was her knight in shining armor abandoned her the moment things got complicated. Emma told me later that Monica had been borrowing money from her college fund for months to pay for expensive dinners, weekend getaways, and new clothes to impress Kyle. She'd stolen over $8,000 from our daughter's future education to fund her affair. When Emma discovered this, that's when she decided to take legal action with me. The neighborhood WhatsApp group was apparently buzzing for weeks with footage and discussions about the Lake House divorce drama. Monica became the cautionary tale that other wives in the area would whisper about. What happens when you get too comfortable with deception? About a month later, I heard from people we both knew that Monica had moved into a tiny studio on the other side of town. She was back at her old marketing job, pulling double shifts just to keep the lights on. The lake house life she once bragged about was gone. No more weekend parties, no more pricey bottles of wine, no more pretending she ruled the estate. These days, Emma and I spend our weekends on the boat, just the two of us, taking in the calm lake with no drama hanging over us. We've made it a habit to watch the sunset from the dock while she talks about college and the future. For the first time in years, the place finally feels like home again. Sometimes Emma asks if I regret how things ended with her mom. I tell her the truth. I don't. I feel free. When someone shows you who they are through their choices, believe them right away. Monica picked lies, theft, and public shame instead of honesty and respect. The fallout was hers alone. The lawyers weren't cheap, but keeping what I worked for and securing Emma's future was worth it. Marcus even said it was one of the most detailed asset protection cases he'd ever seen, and now he uses it as a model for other clients. The best part? Monica never saw it coming. She was too wrapped up in her little romance with Kyle to notice I was always 10 steps ahead. She thought she was in some love story where the cheating partner gets the house, the boat, and the new guy. What she really walked into was a legal thriller, one where planning and patience always beat passion and betrayal. And if there's a lesson here, it's this. When someone disrespects you enough to show off their affair on your own property, don't waste energy on anger. Get smart. Get lawyers. Get proof. Get organized. Guard what's yours before they try to steal it. Because when the dust clears, the person holding the paperwork is the one sailing off into the sunset.